All right, so first of all, I want to thank you all for volunteering to be part of the FVPSA, or Family Violence Prevention and Services Act Evaluation Committee. I know some of you are seasoned veterans on evaluation committees, and this is completely new for some of you, but we're hoping that this meeting will help everybody feel comfortable and prepared for the process. So my name is Julie Linsmith. I think most of you all know me, and I work for the State of Nevada Division of Child and Family Services, DCFS, the Victim Services Unit. I have prepared this presentation, but I want this to meet what you guys need, so feel free at any time to stop me, ask questions as we go through things. Let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow. You guys all have the ability to mute and unmute yourself. I haven't taken that away from you, so feel free to speak up if you have questions or I'm going over something too fast. So today, I thought that what we would talk about would be an overview of FVPSA, the review committee process, the application format, score sheets, and the meeting. And if there's anything else you have questions or any other topics you want me to answer for you on the evaluation committee, feel free to let me know, speak up, and we can just add that. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about an overview of FVPSA funding, because I noticed that when I've done review committees in the past, some of you are very familiar with the funding sources and some of you do not know the different grants, and that's totally okay, and you don't expected to know everything about the grants, but we wanted to give you an overview so you knew a little bit about the grant that you're reading applications for. So FVPSA is administered by the Administration of Child and Families, or ACF, Family and Youth Service Bureau, or FYSB, from the federal side. And it is the primary federal resource dedicated to the provision of domestic violence shelters, supportive services, and related programming for victims of domestic and dating violence and their dependents. There's all the fun codes, the CFRs and UCF, that regulate it, but you guys are not expected to read any of those or know those. I just put them in there in case people are interested. And FVPSA started in 1984. So the intent of the FVPSA funding is to establish, maintain, and expand programs and projects within the state that to help prevent incidents of family violence, domestic violence, and dating violence, and to provide immediate shelter support services and access to community-based programs for victims of family violence, domestic violence, or dating violence and their dependents, and to provide specialized services for children exposed to family violence, domestic violence, or dating violence, underserved populations, and victims. So FVPSA funding, 74% of the funding we award must go to agencies that provide immediate shelter and supportive services. So that'll be $964,802 this year. And 26% can go to agencies providing supportive services and preventative services, which will be $338,985. And the categories are kind of strange in that if the shelters are providing supportive services and preventative services, that's fine. That all counts as that shelter and supportive services, even though it doesn't mention prevention in there. So that's a little different. And so this year we have a total of $1,303,787 to award. So that's exciting. I'm going to go over some FVPSA requirements. I will review all the applications too. So if we have any concerns, that'll flag on our side. You don't have to worry about these, but we just wanted people to have a little background on this. So the services must be voluntary and there must be no conditions imposed on receipt of emergency shelter. The subrecipients may not apply inappropriate screening mechanisms such as criminal background checks or sobriety requirements for victims to stay in the shelter. And income eligibility standards may not be applied to individuals receiving assistance or service. And no person shall, on the grounds of actual perceived gender, including gender identity, be excluded from participation in or be denied benefits or subject to discrimination under any program or activity funded in whole or part through FVPSA. So just a normal kind of regulations. We don't expect you to know everything that is allowable or not allowable. We just wanted to give you an overview on some of the things you might see in the applications. And we will make sure everything is allowable before we complete the awarding process with the agency. And also, if there's a huge portion of their application that's a not allowable cost, that'll be brought up in the evaluation meeting discussion. So some of the things you'll see is advocacy, case management services, legal and medical advocacy, assistance in securing resources, transportation, childcare, job training and employment services, financial planning, literacy services, parenting and education services. Some things that are not allowed are direct payments to any victim or dependent of a victim, supplanting existing resources for the same project or activity. So if they want this funding to replace the funding that they already have, that's not going away. They just want to use that funding for something else. They would have to expand instead of replacing it. And then services to individuals who are not victims or dependents of victims of family violence, domestic violence, or dating violence. So that was just a quick overview of what FVPSA is. Does anybody have any questions about that before we move on to the evaluation process? Okay, you guys are quiet. You can always unmute yourselves and talk or put anything in the chat. So for those of you who have not been on an evaluation committee before, here's the flow. Applications are received and reviewed for eligibility. So the deadline was 5 p.m. yesterday. So I received the applications and then made sure all the agencies that applied were eligible for the funding. We did receive 19 applications. Then the applications are sent to you guys to review. You're going to review and score the applications, and then the GMU also reviews and scores them on their GMU score. And then we are doing a little bit different this year. We'd like you to submit your score sheets to us by 5 p.m. on Monday, November 15th, just so that we can have all the scores and comments ready for the evaluation meetings. You can always change your score if someone's conversation makes you think, oh, I didn't notice that and I'd like to adjust it. But we just like the score sheets in by Monday so that I can have all that summed up for you guys on the screen for the meeting. And then we'll have the evaluation committee meeting, and then we'll do the funding recommendations, and that will be sent to admin for approval, and I do that part after we meet. We'll go through the scoring and evaluation committee meetings in more details later on. Does anybody have any questions about the overview? Okay. How many applications did you receive last year? So I think we got 21 last year. There was actually 2 agencies that didn't apply last year, or didn't apply this year, that received funding last year. So one of them has had quite a bit of transition lately, so I think that's why they missed the application deadline. And then there was one other agency, and I'm not sure why they didn't apply. The funding, Sheila, the funding is slightly larger than last year. Last year it was 1.2 million. This year it's 1.3 million. So it's like 100,000 more, I think. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I can look it up if you're interested. Yeah, it is good news that we won't have to be having a huge cut. Yeah. We had, here, let me pull this up. We had applications for $2,082,414. So we only have to cut like $700,000, which sounds like a lot, but is not that bad comparatively. I think last year we had over double the amount that we had to award, so we had to cut it by at least 50%. So we're in good shape this year. So I wanted to go over the application format with you guys because it's a little different. So you'll get the application in at least 2 parts, and they'll be PDFs. And part 1 is the part that they submit online. And it'll have section B, which is the proposal summary. And this doesn't relate to your scoring at all, but might be useful for you to look at. It kind of gives a little summary and what their mission is. And we added the question this year based on some good feedback from evaluation committee members last year, that if people are asking for more than they asked for last year, what they're going to do with the difference, or why they're asking for more. So I think that will be really helpful information for some of you guys to look at for our discussion. And then section C is in that part 1, which is the proposal narrative. And this is where most of your scoring will be based off, because this is their answers to all the narrative questions on the application. So this is the part you'll be reading the most. You don't need to worry about word counts. I will verify the word counts, and if people went over, I'll let you guys know, and I'll adjust your score sheets to reflect that. And then section E, which is the agency self-assessment. And this does not relate to the scoring anymore. Last year it did, but this year it doesn't. We just have agencies complete this so we can do their agency risk assessment, but you're more than welcome to look at it, but it does not factor into their scoring. So if you don't have a curiosity into that, you don't have to read that section. And then part 2 will have at least section A in it, which is the application form, which doesn't relate to scoring, but some people scanned all their documents into part 2, and some sent each of the other parts as another attachment. So then they'll be labeled as part 3, part 4, part 5, and I'll show you those. And those are the scope of work table, the proposed budget, and the budget narrative form, and then resumes, MOUs, and the single audit or financial reviews. And what you'll be looking at is the scope of work table and the budget proposal / the budget narrative form. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so here are our applications we received. So you'll see AEDV sent them all as separate. So I've labeled them consistently. So part 1 is everything that came off that online. And if you look at part 2, it'll just be the application form. And so then part 3 will be the scope of work and so on. But if you go to CAHS, or Consolidated Agencies of Health Human Services, you can see that they sent, oh, I mislabeled this. I forgot an F on it, guys. If you have this one, you can add that or just ignore that. But all of theirs are in part 2. So there's the online section that has the narrative in part 1, and then everything else is in this document. And so we'll go over these and the scoring form in a little bit so you can know kind of what you're looking for on these. Do you have any questions before? Do you guys want to see what the part 1 looks like? This is what part 1 looks like. And you can see all this stuff is that first section that doesn't relate directly to scores, but might help you understand what's going on. And then section C is where the proposal narrative starts. And this is the bulk of this. And then you get to section E, which is the agency self-assessment. And again, this doesn't relate to scoring, so unless you have a burning desire to know what policies and procedures they have, you wouldn't need to read through all of this. That's okay, Don. You can hop off. Thanks for joining, and it's recorded, so if you want to learn more about it, we'll get you that.
Thanks,
all right.
Julie. Bye.
Bye. So any other questions about the application format before we go on to talk about the score sheets and things? Okay, so the score sheets are Excel documents, and they'll be emailed to you with each of the applications, and you'll need one for each application. So when I email them to you, it'll have the agency name on the score sheet already, so that you've got that all set. And you're going to remember to write notes on it so that we can provide feedback to agencies to help them improve. So think about what might have made that a better application. Here's a screenshot of it, but let me pull it up because it'll be easier. Oh, I don't even have one up anymore. It'll be easier for me to walk you through the steps with one up. So this is what the score sheet looks like. And you'll want to type your name in the reviewer section. There's instructions, but I don't know how useful they are. And then each section has a point value, and you can enter in here, you know, maybe this was 3 out of 5, this is 5 out of 5, I don't know. And then it'll add at the bottom. And these should correspond with the numbers in the narrative. So section C, narrative question 1, should be given 10 points based on their answer in that section. And then here you can type no success examples, or examples were vague, or whatever you want to type in here that will give feedback on your thoughts on why you scored it that way. And the narrative questions are pretty straightforward. There is a matrix that I'm sending you all with your assignments that looks like this. That'll tell you kind of an example of what might be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It doesn't have every scenario that could happen, so you kind of have to use your judgment a little too and decide, like, is that a great answer, 5, is it excellent, or is it missing or a non-existent answer, which is a 1, or somewhere in between. But this should help you kind of gauge for what would be maybe an excellent answer and what would be somewhere in between. And this goes through each section too, so it matches the score sheet and gives you what you need to look at on each section of the score sheet. So the narratives are just how well they answer the questions. And then the budget is where I think a lot of people get confused as what they should be looking at. So there's 2 parts of the budget. There's this part, which is the proposed budget, project budget. And this amount here should match what they asked for in section A, and it should match what their next budget section says. So it should be 21,269.24. And honestly, this should be rounded to the nearest dollar. So this is going to be like at least 1 little point off, because that, you know, we said to round. And then you can see most of their costs is in personnel, and some is in contract and contractual and consultant. They can have it in any of these categories, and then that will match this, which is their budget narrative form. And sometimes these will be the right way, or sometimes you're going to have to rotate it like I did. You can see their employees listed and their fringe, and you can see how much their annual salary is. So you just want to look at these to see if anything looks crazy. Like if they were going to pay an advocate, let's say $200,000 a year, that might be a little bit of a red flag, like what, how did they get that amount? But if they look reasonable, most people don't pay very well. So I don't think that's usually a concern, but you can look at it, see if that makes sense for the position. And then travel training, you just want to see what they put in there, if it makes sense, if it seems reasonable. Operating, same thing. And then if they have something that's unique, they'll need to put a justification. And that's what that scoring matrix we'll talk about, is the justification. So like the justification, who's traveling to what conference and why? What are some other weird costs? You know, if it says office supplies $2,000 a month, why is that $2,000 a month? That's quite high for office supplies. What are they buying in there? So you'll look for justifications on the section. And contractual, it should say who they're contracting with and what that person's going to do. And that's the justification here is all filled out. And then the other section, they would want a justification if they put something in there. And then indirect costs can be either 0 or up to 10%, or I think we have 2 agencies that have negotiated indirect rates. So if they have that, that's fine. But UNLV does, and the tribes do. So I think Duckwater sent us theirs. So that's Form 1. And then this is Form 2, which is the agency budget. And you can see this one is filled out because this is pulled from Form 1, but then they wrote what their other funding sources are here. And that's what we want. If these are all blank, then they did not fill this out, and they should lose at least 5 points on the score sheet in the budget, where it says budget narrative, description of budget items. They'll lose 5 points here. And when you look at the matrix, it'll outline that too. So form 2 and 3, if it's missing the budget summary, which is that second form, or the match, which we'll show you, then you would mark them down. Now, Duckwater did apply, and they are tribes, so they do not need to fill out this last form that I'm going to show you. That's the total of form 2. And then form 3 is how they're going to provide their 20% match that's required by FVPSA. And Duckwater will not need that because they're a tribe, and tribes don't have to provide match. But everybody else will need that. And so they're going to do theirs through operating. And so that's filled out, and they will get full points for that. Okay, sorry, that was a lot of talking on my part. Does anybody have any questions on anything so far? Okay, if anything comes up while you're trying to fill out the score sheets, or you have questions while you're doing it, just feel free to give me a call. I'm going to actually put my cell phone number in the chat. You can call my cell phone anytime. I am only in the office 3 days a week, so 2 days a week I'm working from home. So if you call my office line, I might not call you back for a whole day. So if you have anything, you can call, you can text. That's my cell phone. Feel free to reach me on that. So then I'll just let you guys know a little bit about the flow of the meetings. So the meetings, there's going to be 3 4-hour meetings. They're Wednesday the 17th, Thursday the 18th, and Friday the 19th. And there's the times. And please let me know if you have any conflicts so that I can try to schedule the agencies you are reviewing, the discussions for those at a time that you will be there. It's nice if you can attend them all, the meetings. It makes it the best because then we can have good discussions and everybody knows about all the agencies. But I understand that 12 hours of time is hard to get. So if you can't attend them all, that's okay, but please try to be there when your agency is being talked about, the ones you review. And I will make an agenda this week by early next week at the latest and let you know approximately the times of each application will be discussed. Sometimes we're a little ahead of schedule, sometimes we're a little behind schedule, but it'll give you an approximation. And then each person who reviews the application will talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the application. And it's about 15 minutes for each agency is about the length of the conversation. Sometimes that goes a little over, sometimes it's a little shorter. Other reviewers may ask questions about the applications that they did not review. So usually we have each agency or each person who reviewed the agency give a little summary, talk about it, and then people might have follow-up questions. And then Friday's meeting, that last meeting, we'll discuss overall funding thoughts. And so that's a really good one to attend if you can, so that we can have a thoughtful meeting about who we want to prioritize funding to and who we might not want to fund or who we want to give less funding to. So that's an important meeting. So that's all I had. I know we have quite a bit of time left. So I'm going to open up to you guys any questions, any concerns. I put you all to sleep. All right, well, I'm not hearing any, so I'll give you guys a half an hour back of your, I'll give you guys a half an hour back, thanks, of your day. And if you guys think of any questions, feel free to contact me. I'm going to try to send out all the applications by the end of today. So I'm working on that. I've gotten some out to people already. If you're a new reviewer, what I've heard is it takes about 4 hours to do a review for each application if you want to try to plan your time. Those of you that are experienced in review, would you agree that it's about 4 hours an application?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you want to plan how much time you're going to need for each one to kind of space it out so you get time to get them done. But I think the most time everybody's getting assigned 4 or 5 applications, so it's not as bad as like FOCA where people get like 10 to 12 applications. So hopefully you guys will be able to get through them pretty quick. They're a little shorter also than the VOCA applications for those of you who have done VOCA before. All right, well, let me know if things come up. I'm always trying to figure out what you guys need to know ahead of the applications and how I can make it smoother for everyone, because we really do appreciate all your time. All right, have a good afternoon.